People always talk about divorce like it's a two-way street, two adults drifting apart, growing differences, falling out of love. But what no one talks about is what it's like when you're the kid caught in the middle and somehow you become the reason the whole thing fell apart. I was 16 when my parents sat me down at the kitchen table and said they were separating. No big fight, no shouting. Just two people who couldn't look at each other anymore, with me in the crossfire. "I hope you're happy now," Mom muttered, not even bothering to look up from her coffee. Dad just sighed, rubbing his temples like I'd given him a headache. I remember blinking at them, trying to figure out what I had missed. I hadn't snuck out. I wasn't failing school. I didn't even talk back, at least, not more than a normal teenager. But over the next few weeks, the picture became clearer. It wasn't just that they were separating.
It was why.
And in every version of the story they told, to family, to friends, even to my school counselor, I was the common denominator. I should probably introduce myself. I'm Natalie Green. I'm 30 now, but this story starts back when I still thought that if you were a good kid, your parents wouldn't leave you or each other. See, my mom told people I'd gotten too defiant and distant, like I'd somehow poisoned the warmth between her and my dad. My dad spun it differently. He said my mother had become emotionally unstable and hard to live with, and that he had stayed for my sake, longer than he should have. Each time I walked into a room full of family, at holidays, reunions, even graduations, I could feel it, the subtle, suffocating judgment. My Aunt Leslie once whispered, she was always a handful, when I passed her the mashed potatoes. My cousin Jared unfollowed me on everything after my dad moved out. Nobody said it outright, but it was obvious. They blamed me. What hurt most wasn't the gossip. It was that deep down I started believing them. I started asking myself if maybe I had been too much, too emotional, too quiet, too distant. Had I made them fight more? Had I ruined something I didn't even understand? But the truth was, I was just trying to survive. My mom had started drinking quietly, wine that turned into whiskey. Nights spent passed out on the couch. Days where she snapped at me for the smallest things, then cried and begged me not to leave her. And Dad? He was always gone. Business trips, late meetings, phone calls in the garage that ended when I walked in. One night, while I was using his old laptop to finish a paper, a notification popped up. It was a message preview from my godmother, my mom's best friend since college. I didn't mean to look. I really didn't. But curiosity took over. "Miss your hands on me. Did you book that hotel again for next week?" My stomach turned to stone. I clicked the message thread. Dozens of texts, pictures, weekend plans, jokes about my mom, jokes about me. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I didn't say a word, because somehow, even with the evidence right there, I still thought maybe it was better not to blow things up more than they already were. Mom had always said she and my godmother had grown apart.
Now I knew why.
Dad said he left because of Mom's moods, her drinking. But I saw now, it wasn't the truth. It was the excuse. And I was the scapegoat. Years passed. I graduated high school with honors.
Got a scholarship.
Moved out early. I thought maybe, with space, things would settle. Maybe they'd come around. But they didn't. Mom still blamed me for her breakdown. Dad still blamed me for tearing the family apart. And the rest of the family? They just followed the story they were fed. Nobody asked what it was like to grow up in a house full of secrets and silent wars. Nobody asked what it does to a kid to feel like loving their parents means letting them destroy each other. So I learned to keep things neat. Polite smiles. Holiday calls. A Christmas card here and there. I kept my head down. Until last year. My cousin Becca got married, and the whole family came together again. I hadn't seen many of them in years. But it only took one glass of champagne and one question. How are your parents these days? For all that old weight to settle back on my shoulders. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. That night, I decided I was done being the villain in their fiction. If I was going to be blamed for breaking the silence, I might as well earn it. And the annual family newsletter? That was the perfect place to start. Every December, like clockwork, the Green Family newsletter went out. It started as a joke back when I was in college. Uncle Mark dared me to summarize the entire year in one page without making it sound like a eulogy. I did it, and people loved it, called it charming, funny, even therapeutic. So every year after that, I kept doing it. Somewhere along the way, I became the unofficial voice of the family. Looking back now, I think that's what made it the perfect weapon. After that wedding, after that bathroom mirror moment, I didn't act on impulse. I let the idea sit. I waited, watched. I wanted to be sure. Because once I cracked the facade, there'd be no gluing it back together. So I waited until the holidays rolled around. And then I sat down with a mug of cider, lit a candle, and opened the blank newsletter template on my laptop. Normally, the process was cheerful. Updates from my cousins, a few phone calls for quotes, and a lot of editing out passive-aggressive lines from my aunts. But this year, I didn't call anyone. I just started typing. Green Family Chronicles, another year in the books. The title was the same. I knew they'd click on it expecting the usual. Weddings, graduations, baby photos, family jokes. And at first, that's what they got. I wrote about Cousin Maddie's new bakery. I included a paragraph about Uncle Jim's retirement road trip in his beat-up RV. I even mentioned Grandma's scandalous bingo win that she wouldn't stop talking about. I made sure the front half of the newsletter read like a Norman Rockwell painting. And then I got to the reflection section. Usually this was a sentimental part. A few words on what the year taught us, maybe something about gratitude or growth. But this year, I wrote something else. This year marks a decade since my parents' divorce. 10 years is a long time to carry a story that was never mine to tell. But silence is heavy, and I think the truth deserves a voice, especially when it's been locked away for too long. I sat back for a second. The cursor blinked at me like it was daring me to keep going. So I did. When my parents separated, I was 16. And for 10 years, I lived with the quiet implication that I was the reason. Some of you may remember the way it was framed. Natalie was struggling. Natalie was difficult. Natalie was distant. But here's what really happened. My father had an affair. Not with a stranger, but with my mother's best friend, someone many of you know. My mother knew about it and stayed in silence for almost 2 years. She drank more. She cried more. And eventually she broke. My hands trembled on the keyboard. I hadn't told anyone this before. Not even my therapist. It had always felt like opening a wound that never quite healed. I didn't break their marriage. I was the one holding the pieces while they tried to pretend nothing was wrong. And just like that, the weight started lifting. Not all of it, but enough to keep going. I added one final line. If anyone would like receipts, I've archived the messages. Nothing in this letter is speculation. I could have stopped there. I probably should have stopped there. But instead, I added a quote at the bottom. Sometimes, the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes, it sets them free and finally lets you breathe. Then I proofread the entire letter twice, cleaned up some grammar, and attached our usual family photo at the top, an old one from a happier time. One where I was smiling, not realizing everything behind me was already crumbling. The email list was ready. I had everyone from my tech-savvy cousins to Great Aunt Lila, who still used a Hotmail account. My fingers hovered over the mouse. I whispered, "No going back." And I clicked send. That moment, the silence right after sending it, was louder than anything I'd ever heard. My heart was racing. My palms were sweating. It was late, almost midnight. I sat there in my living room, wrapped in a blanket, staring at my inbox like it was a time bomb. And then the first reply popped up. It was from Aunt Leslie. "Natalie, is this some kind of joke?" Then another, from my cousin Becca. I always suspected. I just didn't want to believe it. And then a flood. Within 20 minutes, my phone lit up like it was being possessed. Calls, texts, emails, social media DMs, even a voicemail from my dad. But I didn't open any of them. Instead, I poured myself another mug of cider and watched the snowfall outside. It was the quietest, calmest I had felt in years. For the first time, they were the ones sitting in discomfort. They were the ones choking on shame and silence. And me? I was just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was anxious, though God knows I should have been, but because I felt a strange, unfamiliar calm. Like I had finally finished holding my breath after 10 years underwater. But by morning, the silence broke like glass. My phone buzzed off the nightstand with a string of new notifications. Emails, voicemails, missed calls from Dad, Mom, Aunt Leslie, Uncle Jim, and someone saved in my phone as... I later remembered that was my godmother's number. I deleted her name long ago. The subject lines were all variations of, "We need to talk." "What the hell, Natalie? Is this true? Call me now." I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I opened the inbox I'd set up just for replies to the family newsletter. I expected hate. Or maybe just shock. But what I didn't expect were thank yous. My cousin Danny, who was 11 when the divorce happened, wrote, "I always knew something was off. They acted like it was your mood swings, but you were just quiet. I'm sorry I believed them." An older second cousin I barely knew replied with, "Your mom and mine drifted apart back then, now I get why. Thank you for being brave." A few were furious, of course. Aunt Leslie called me cruel and immature in all caps. Uncle Mark asked why I couldn't just let the past stay buried. But even in their anger, there was something else. Panic. Because my truth didn't just shatter my parents' carefully curated version of events, it cracked open the whole damn family. Everyone had played a part in keeping the silence alive. Everyone had chosen sides, and most had chosen wrong. And then came the message. It was from my mom. Just 5 words. "I'm outside. Can I come in?" My heart stopped. I walked to the front door, slowly, like I might scare her away. And there she was, standing on my porch in an oversized coat, eyeliner smudged, hair pulled back like she'd slept in the car. She didn't say anything at first. Just looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time in years. Then she whispered, "You should have told him years ago." I stepped aside, and she came in. No drama. No yelling. Just silence and wait, and a hug that didn't feel like an apology, but maybe a beginning. We sat on my couch for hours. She admitted she'd known about the affair almost a year before the divorce. That she'd seen the signs, found the texts, but tried to pretend it wasn't happening. She blamed herself, and when that became unbearable, she blamed me. "I didn't know how to hurt him," she said. "So, I hurt you instead." It wasn't okay. It didn't undo the nights I cried myself to sleep or the years I spent doubting my own worth. But hearing her say it out loud, that mattered. And then, just as the room started to soften, my phone rang. It was Dad. I didn't pick up. He called again, and again. Finally, a voicemail dropped. "I can't believe you'd humiliate me like this. This is slander, Natalie. You've crossed a line. I'm talking to my lawyer." There it was, the man I knew best. Not heartbroken. Not apologetic. Just angry someone finally told the truth out loud. The next day, it escalated. Dad sent a group email to the entire family titled, "Correction and Clarification Regarding Natalie's Claims." He called me emotionally unstable. Accused me of revisionist storytelling. Claimed I was lashing out due to unresolved trauma. He even said my mother was mentally unfit to verify anything. It would have been hilarious if it weren't so pathetic. But the best part? He CC'd the wrong Natalie Green on the email. A friend of mine from high school, also named Natalie Green, texted me, "Your dad just accidentally tried to gaslight me. Should I reply or grab popcorn?" It was almost poetic. So I did what I had prepared for all along. I sent a follow-up email, short and surgical. Subject: verification. Body: as promised, here is the archived folder. Screenshots, message timestamps, and email headers included. I've blurred explicit content, but left enough for context. Trigger warning for manipulation, emotional abuse, and infidelity. This is the truth. You don't have to like it, but you won't rewrite it again. Natalie. And then I attached the drive, the texts, the emails. The photo of my mom's trembling hand holding her best friend's necklace, found behind my dad's dresser. Within an hour, the family group chat, which I'd been silent in for years, started unraveling. One cousin left. Two others argued over what forgiveness looks like. Someone else tried to start a prayer chain, which, okay. But the best moment? My godmother's daughter, my former childhood best friend, texted me privately. I always knew. I just didn't know how to say it. Thank you for saying it first. 2 weeks after I sent the email with the receipts, the silence came back. But it wasn't peaceful this time. It was the kind of silence that creeps in after an explosion, when the smoke's still hanging in the air and everyone's too stunned to speak. I didn't hear from most of my extended family again. A few cousins unfollowed me, and someone, probably Aunt Leslie, removed me from the Green family group chat without a word. No surprise there. But then the real blow landed. An envelope arrived at my apartment. Heavy cardstock. My full name on the front in stiff, lawyer-approved font. Inside was a cease and desist letter. From my father. He was threatening to sue me for defamation of character, emotional damages, and intentional reputational harm. I read it once. Then twice. I even laughed out loud, like a full, bitter laugh that echoed in my empty kitchen. The same man who cheated, lied, and let me carry the blame for a decade was now accusing me of harming him. Classic. I forwarded the letter to a lawyer friend from college who owed me a favor. She read it and said, "It's weak. He won't follow through. This is just intimidation." Still, I could feel the panic rising. I was back in my 16-year-old body, trembling in the hallway, wondering if I'd ruined everything by simply existing. Except this time, I knew better. So I wrote him back. Just one line. Try me. I didn't hear from him again. No formal suit. No court summons. Just that sad little letter and the ghost of a man who could never take accountability if it were handed to him, notarized. A few weeks later, I got an email from someone I hadn't expected. It was from my grandmother. She's never been warm, not with me. Not since the divorce. She chose her son's side without asking questions, like so many did. But her email wasn't what I thought it would be. I read everything. I thought you should know. I asked your father once, years ago, if there was more to the story. He told me not to dig. I didn't. I'm sorry for that. You deserve someone who would. I stared at that email for a long time, because that was all I'd ever wanted. Not revenge. Not even apology. Just someone, anyone, to believe me. To see me. And then something surprising happened. My mom called. She said she was going to therapy. Real therapy. With a trauma specialist. Not the one session and cry in the parking lot kind she used to fake. She said, "You lit the match, Natalie. And maybe it burned everything down, but at least now we can see the wreckage." We started rebuilding. Slowly. Carefully. I wasn't interested in pretending she hadn't hurt me, but I was willing to see the version of her that wanted to grow. For the first time, she said she was proud of me. Not because I graduated. Not because I looked pretty in a picture, but because I told the truth when no one else would. And that made everything worth it. Now, a year later, the Green family newsletter is still being sent out. But I'm no longer the one writing it. Cousin Becca took it over. God bless her cheerful little heart. She keeps it light. Photos, recipes, baby updates. All safe, clean, neutral. But I did something else. I started my own newsletter. A personal one. It's called Truthfully Natalie. It's not for revenge. It's for survivors. For daughters who were scapegoated. For kids who had to parent their parents. For anyone who ever carried someone else's shame like it was their birthright. And you know what? It's growing. Fast. People are hungry for honesty. For mess. For real stories. And it turns out, when you break a silence, really break it, you don't just lose people. You find them too. Last month, I got an email from a stranger. A teenage girl from Minnesota. She wrote, "I showed your story to my mom." She cried. She called her own mother for the first time in 5 years. "I think you saved something. Thank you." I sat there crying into my cup of tea, because for so long, I thought all I had done was destroy. But maybe, just maybe, I built something too.
Not a perfect family.
Not forgiveness, without accountability, but something real and honest and mine. So, yeah, my parents blamed me for their divorce. But now, the truth belongs to me, and I made sure everyone knew it. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Your support means everything. If this story touched you or made you think, please subscribe to our channel for more real, powerful stories.